ministers, ambassadors, generals, ladies and gentlemen, and many friends here present. This is a wonderful opportunity again, Ambassador Eschinger, that you provide us. Today we can organize conference with no single aim except to adapt according to the situation, and your conference has done that perfectly well in the past, be very relevant to the context of today. But my job in Allied Command ahead of transformation since 3 years has been to take in consideration the past, capitalize on the past, adapt to the present, this alliance, and as well keep an eye and try to enable, I would say, the future, even if we cannot predict the future, unfortunately. Nevertheless, there are a lot of predictable things, and I remember 3 years ago we worked very much on the consequences of the overall change in the world, and I can say that refugees was certainly very high in our agenda. Unfortunately, we didn't find many solutions. Almost 1 year ago, it was recalled in the context of the crisis in Ukraine and in conjunction with the equally challenging threats from the south. The Alliance head of states and government, and many of you were there, they met in Wales to reaffirm nation's solidarity. That was striking to see the convergence and the union of all the head of states, not only of NATO, but the partners as well, and including the EU. And they decided to keep this ambitious, dynamic transformation for the alliance to make sure that it keeps its relevance, its military credibility. And they insisted, they stressed for the necessity for NATO to remain forward-looking, adapting its posture, its capabilities, structures in a very organized and proactive manner in order to cope with the current as well as the future security challenges. In other words, they confirmed the relevance of the alliance transformation focused on military credibility, interoperability, and readiness. But before sharing my vision of this NATO's perspective very rapidly, I would like to start a quick tour d'horizon of our main security challenges, even if Ambassador Eschinger has done that very well already, but stressing more on the implications for the balance between the different missions of NATO as they are today: collective defense, crisis management, and cooperative security. Some of you would say that we can summarize in certain way the situation of today with 3 R's: Russia, radicalism, and refugees. This is a summary, but unfortunately it's a little bit more complex than that. In fact, the Alliance and Europe as well together are confronted with a mix of and associated risks, which I believe are perhaps without precedent in the modern history. The simultaneous complexity and interconnection of crises require more than ever a global strategy based on solidarity, and which must take due account of the various national sensibilities or regional sensibilities of allies and the real nature of the risks, and mainly today in the East and the South. To the East, obviously, the Ukraine crisis has brought back the spectre of state-to-state conflict, in particular concerning the Eastern allies. Russia's implementation of a global hybrid strategy through the coordination of all instruments of power, military, economic, political, international, and even explicitly nuclear, will require us to review and develop appropriate, proportionate responses, ones that are more global, more inclusive, and more cooperative. Therefore, this crisis highlighted the continued need for a modern, credible mix of nuclear and conventional collective defense, able to prevent, first, to deter, third, and if needed, to act together. To the south, we are witnessing the destabilization of the entire region, which weakened and unstable states, which are powerless, unfortunately, to hold that. These lawless, huge zones are emerging as well on the Europe's periphery. They are close to our periphery, which also encourage in a certain way the creation of support bases for terrorist, radicalist, extremist groups, and which at the end threaten our allied territory. While this instability may be with us for the long term, allies are already confronted with the immediate consequences of the crisis exploited by these groups, such as, unfortunately, the massive influx of refugees, or inspiring terrorist attack against even our territories or populations. It shows the need for rapid strengthening the capability and capacity of these nations, of the forward nations, in close coordination and cooperation with our trusted partners. So in addressing this very demanding geostrategic environment, we must as well take into consideration the evolving nature of the threat, supported by massive investment in many countries outside of NATO. The rapid proliferation of very sensitive military technologies in avionics, ballistics, detection, precision, drones, as well as the free access to dual-use technologies will threaten our technological superiority during the next decade. Advanced weapon systems for anti-area, anti-access denial, in particular those designed for land